Hello book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Nat Cat's Bookish Cafe. Today I am here to do my June reading wrap up. Alright guys, so a couple things before I jump in. My allergies are rough today. I did take my allergy pill a little while ago, so hopefully I'm not snuffling too much, but if my nose gets progressively redder throughout this video, that's just the way it is when you got to blow your nose all the time. But that being said, today I'm here to wrap up my June reading. I had a great reading month in June. If you would like to see what I read in the first half of the month, as always, I will go ahead and link the mid-month check-in up above as well as down below. But in this video, we will go ahead and go through what I read in the second half of the month as well as some basic stats for the entirety of the month. So in the second half of the month, I read 10 books. So those are the 10 books that I will be reviewing here in this video. But let's go ahead and go through my general stats for the entire month before we jump into those reviews. So this month, I read a total of 17 books, which is definitely more than I have been the last few months. The last few months, I think I've been about 8 to 10 books. So other than January, this is my best reading month of the year so far. As far as page number goes, we read 3,864, which is also one of the highest numbers of pages that I read this year. So super happy with that. We were just powering through books this month. As far as audiobooks go, I read 35.53 hours. This is not unusually high for me. I didn't read a lot more audiobooks this month. Despite reading a lot more physical books, I'm still in a bit of a audiobook slump. Average rating wise, we had an average of a 3.94, which considering how many books we read is not too shabby. Breaking down the star ratings, once again, I had nothing below a 3-star, but we did have 2 3-star reads, 3 3.5-star reads, 8 4-star reads. It was a very 4-star heavy month, 3 4.5-star ratings, and only 1 5-star rating. All right, guys, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into these reviews. We have a lot to get through, so we are gonna kind of try to go as fast as possible while still giving you the information you need about these books. Started off the second half of this month by finishing my queer superhero vlog, which I will go ahead and link up above if you want to check that out. I ended up finishing this vlog by reading Love Sick Gods by Amanda Moyweisen, and this was a KU read. It is the first book in a duology where we are following 2 people with superpowers, one a supervillain and one a superhero. In this book, we are following Danny, who as his day job is a detective, and on the side, he is also the City of Olympus's hero, Zeus, which means he has lightning-based superpowers, and he also has heightened healing abilities. On the other hand, we are following Mal, also known as the villain Prometheus, who is the leader of the Titans, and they are an organized group of thieves. Zeus and Prometheus have been kind of battling each other for a few months, but it's always been with a lot of banter because Prometheus group does do a lot of stealing, but they don't cause a lot of like property damage or harm or kill people. So as far as the villains go, they're not really evil. So Zeus doesn't take them as like a serious threat to the city. And one day he actually approaches Prometheus for help with taking down a villain who is actually killing and harming a lot of people in this city. However, while Prometheus initially agrees to help with this on the day of the takedown, he doesn't actually show up, meaning Zeus has to take him down on his own, which he's successful in. However, during the scrimmage, Zeus's mother ends up dying, and he is holding Prometheus responsible for that. He decides the best form of revenge is to make Prometheus fall in love with him and to then break his heart. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. I thought that it was an entertaining read. I thought that it was a little bit surface level for my taste. I felt like it got a little bit repetitive when it came to Danny or Zeus's mental health issues that he was struggling with throughout this book, and the fact that he continuously recognized that talking to those who care about him helps him, yet at the same time he continues to withdraw within himself and then kind of wonders why he's lashing out. So that got a little bit frustrating. There is a bit of an age gap between Prometheus and Danny. Danny's about 10 years younger, and I think that Danny's emotional immaturity really shone through this book, and that did frustrate me a little bit. However, I did really enjoy their relationship for the most part. I thought that the smut was really well done, and I thought they also had some sweet moments. Plus, it's always entertaining to kind of watch a character say that they're making someone fall in love with them, and that they're in charge of the situation, when it's very clear that they themselves are falling in love with that character as well. On top of that, a new villain is introduced throughout this story who starts causing trouble for our two characters, and I did think that he was an interesting villain with some unique powers that I'm intrigued to learn more about in book 2. So overall, if you're looking for a quick kind of nemesis to lovers book with some superheroes and some good smut, then I think that you will go ahead and enjoy this book and that it's worth checking out. Up next, I'm going to actually talk about 2 books at the same time because I finished the Perfect World series by Ria Aruga by reading volumes 11 and 12. I ended up rating volume 11 3.5 stars and the final volume 4 stars. Would I recommend this series overall? I think I would if you're going into it with the right expectations. I went into it hoping for kind of a contemporary romance situation. That is not exactly what this book is. When it comes to the pacing of the romance, I think that the story falls short quite a bit, and that's one of the reasons that I rated a lot of these volumes slightly lower, just because the pacing sometimes caused a little bit of boredom on my part. But overall, the strength of this series lies with the disability representation, because not only is the main male character that we're following disabled, but a lot of the different people that they're interacting with are also in wheelchairs but have differing situations than our main characters, because no 2 disabled people's lives are the same. So I'm definitely glad that the author explored that. Essentially, in this book, we are following a young woman who is reacquainted with a high school crush of hers, and he has since suffered a spinal cord injury, which causes him to now be in a wheelchair full time. And this book kind of follows them as they start to form a relationship, and then after that relationship is developed. So I thought it was good for the disability representation, not so much for the romance, and it really did struggle with pacing. But if you're looking for a book that does explore the life of someone in a wheelchair, then this could definitely be a book that you want to check out. Up next, I read another KU book, and that is Only for the Weak by Natasha Bishop. This is a well-beloved romance that has been going around lately, and this is a contemporary romance. In this book, we are following Janella, who is the bridesmaid and sister to the bride, and they are having a wedding, and they actually decide to go to this destination a week early so the main bridal party can kind of relax and enjoy themselves before all the stress of the wedding and all of the other guests arriving. However, lately Janella and her sister have been having some beef, and Janella does not know why, but maybe it stems from the fact that her sister is marrying Janella's ex-boyfriend. Once she arrives there, the best friend of the groom, Rome, approaches Janella and they start talking and deciding that for the week, the two of them will help relax themselves even more by having a bit of a sexual agreement. Janella wants to keep this agreement secret because like everyone thinks that she is upset that her sister is marrying her ex-boyfriend. She has literally no problem with it, but everyone thinks that it's kind of a weird situation and that she's like the poor scorned sister, and she's like, I'm totally fine, but she doesn't want people to think that she's sleeping with Rome to kind of bury her feelings about the fact that her ex is getting married to her sister. And Rome is like, hey, whatever you need, I'm here for you. And he is fully intending to make sure she sees how much he can offer her in hopes that she will want to continue the relationship with him after the wedding. This book had so much drama in it when it came to the sisterly relationship, and not just Janella's relationship with her sister, but also her relationship with her mother. Both her mother and her sister are very toxic. I would say they are the queens of gaslighting, and that is something that Janella needs to learn to stand up to throughout this story. And just kind of watching Janella realize that she's been living her life for other people and kind of bending over backwards to make other people happy, even if it makes her unhappy, was really great. Rome was there the entire time. He was like, hey, I'm going to show you how great life can be when you're not putting up with all this BS and when you have someone who's taking care of you as much as you are taking care of them. So I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. I really had a great time with it. I thought Janella was a really interesting character. Did she frustrate me with how long she put up with people's BS? Absolutely. I was like, girl, you are such an intelligent, strong, driven woman, but it is very clear that her desperation to keep her family is her biggest weakness, and that she will do anything to keep them, even if it could be beneficial for her to just step back and make them realize that they either need to change the way they're treating her or they need to say goodbye to her. Rome, on the other hand, is a real king. Everyone loves Rome. He does so many wonderful things to her, for her, to her as well. But he is honestly a dream boyfriend. He listens so well. He really picks up on her needs without her having to explicitly say what she needs. He is just on point when it comes to making sure his woman is well taken care of. I also enjoyed her relationship with one of her friends. I enjoyed the sass and the banter and the drama and the sex and the setting. It was overall just a really fun book, and I think it is definitely worth all the hype that it is getting recently. Next, we have an audiobook, which is A Marvelous Light by Freya Marsk, and this is a historical light fantasy where we are following Robin and Edwin. And Robin has been trying to find himself a nice job now that his parents are dead and have left him and his sister in not the best financial position, especially since his sister wants to go to college. He wants to be able to provide that kind of life for her, and he is given a very obscure job by someone who did not like his parents, and I don't think this person knew what this job was. They were just like, no one cares about that job, so I'm gonna give it to him because I want him to feel unimportant. And that job actually ends up introducing him to the world of magic. And there he meets Edwin, who also works at this position. And essentially their job is to look into situations that could potentially be related to magic and make sure that they do what they can to cover up the potential existence of magic. However, on his first day there, he realizes that he is replacing a man who has up and disappeared, and he is attacked by some people who seem to think that he knows where this man buried a very important secret, and they curse him in a way that causes him to experience a lot of pain. So he and Edwin set out to see if they can find a solution, because Edwin, while he does have magic, doesn't have a lot of them and is actually kind of looked down on by his family. While they are off trying to find a way to lift this curse, they're also trying to figure out what happened to this past employee and exactly what kind of mess he had gotten himself into. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. I am kind of going back and forth if I should continue this book via audiobook, because I love an audiobook where someone has an English accent. It just adds to the story and to the vibe. But when I tell you that for like the first half of this book, I was just no thoughts, head empty, which made it very hard for me to grasp onto like who the characters were and what they were doing. I spent a big portion of this book just not having a clue what was going on. That is partially my fault because I don't always pay attention to audiobooks as closely as I pay attention to physical books, which is why I tend not to listen to fantasy based stories, even if they have a relatively light magic system like this book. So it may be beneficial to me to go ahead and continue the story physically despite the fun accents, because I just could not grasp the story for the life of me, and obviously that decreased my enjoyment. Is it 100% my fault, or did the author at times make things confusing? I couldn't tell you, but I just wanted to throw it out there that that is something that contributed to the lower rating. I thought that the story was fun. I liked the mystery aspect of it. I enjoyed our characters' personalities and how they interacted with each other, and as they started to realize that they were rather fond of each other and kind of started a bit of a romantic relationship between the two of them. That was a lot of fun. Edwin is someone who had rather low self-esteem, not surprisingly, because he was constantly looked down on, not just by his family, but everyone in the magical society, because he needed kind of a crutch, I guess you could say, to use his magic. Most people would use kind of, it seemed like hand signals, but he required like physical string of a sort, kind of like a cat cradle situation to perform his magic. But at the same time, he was incredibly intelligent, and he actually knew more about magic than people who had a strong reserve of magic within them. And he did a lot of research and actually progressed magic through his research quite a bit. So he was definitely an intelligent character, and I do like an underdog character who doesn't rely purely on like physical power, but is able to go ahead and step above people with physical power by using their intellect. So that is something I enjoyed in the story. I thought that their relationship was really cute. There was some smut in this book that was relatively well done, and like I said, I did think that the magic system was interesting, and as well as the plot. So I am intrigued to see where the series goes, because they were definitely hinting at some big bad things on the horizon. Once again, I'm going to talk about two books at the same time because I read volumes 1 and 2 of Tokyo Ghoul by Sue Sieja, whose name I am 100% saying wrong. I need to look up how to say that name. But I gave both of these volumes 3 stars, which is not the best start to this series. I'm definitely not DNFing it. I think that we very much were just being introduced to the character and to the world of ghouls. So it's a bit of a slow start in my opinion, but I do think that it will go up from here, especially since I did watch the first season of the anime and I enjoyed it. So I really want to go ahead and give the manga a try. Essentially, we are following a young man who goes on a date with a woman that he has been admiring for quite a while, and then she tries to eat him because she is a ghoul, and quite a powerful one at that. Luckily for him, a building or a bridge of sorts kind of collapses on her and she dies, but he is severely injured, so the doctor ends up transplanting some of her organs into him, causing him to become half human, half a ghoul, and he needs to kind of figure out how he is going to live his new life. Luckily, there is a coffee shop that he has been frequenting that employs ghouls specifically, have kind of taken him in so that they can teach him how to be a ghoul and also to help him have access to human meat without him having to kill, because he doesn't want to kill anyone, and in fact he doesn't even want to eat human meat, so he is doing everything in his power to restrain himself from doing so. We are also introduced to some ghoul hunters or investigators who are sent out to the different districts to kind of kill the ghouls, because the ghouls are killing people. And these investigators seem a little over eager to kill, and our character witnesses him kill the mother of another young ghoul, and he's kind of like, hey, you know, I get that they need to kill ghouls that are out committing mass murder, but this woman, she wasn't doing that, and to kill her right in front of her child is like really terrible. So I would like to learn how to defend myself and other innocent ghouls. So in the first 2 volumes, he's kind of been introduced to the ghoul world and realized that he needs to kind of learn to use his ghoul abilities to protect not just himself, but other innocent ghouls as well, and that things aren't as black and white as he initially thought. The main reason I gave these 3 stars is because I was kind of bored. I'm gonna be honest, I was a little bit bored by these books. They just weren't giving me too much, but I'm hoping now that the plot is escalating and things are gonna get a little bit more intense, that I will continue to enjoy the series. So I'm definitely gonna go ahead and give it a few more volumes. Up next, we have an actual physical book, and that is gonna be Collateral Damage, which is episode 8 of Criminal Intentions by Cole McCade. And I ended up giving this a volume 4 stars. In the series, we are following Malcolm and Sanjay, and they are both detectives, homicide detectives for the Baltimore Police Department. And we've been following them and a different homicide or mystery of the week in each different volume. And in this volume, we are dealing with a situation where a father has snapped and he has killed his wife when she tries to file for divorce, and has up and kidnapped his young daughter. So there are definitely very high stakes. They are very much on a timeline. This guy is very unstable. It seems that he himself is potentially a psychopath who was attempting to live a normal life, and that has kind of gone out the window. So it is definitely a possibility that he kills his own child as well. So our characters are definitely feeling the pressure with this case. I have to admit, I kind of like the cases where they are trying to rescue someone more than the ones where they just have a dead body, because it just adds more intensity to the story, because they are just trying to beat the clock instead of just looking for a murderer. They are still potentially trying to save someone, which just makes the stakes and the emotions so much higher. I once again enjoyed Sanjay and Malcolm's relationship. At this point, they are dating, and they are still kind of trying to navigate what it means to be dating. It is not something either of them have done for a long time. Malcolm was married and then divorced and then spent the last few years having one-night stands. Sanjay, on the other hand, had a very toxic relationship and in his past, and has not really had too many relationships since then, both due to his past, his autism, as well as the fact that he is demisexual. So we are still doing a lot with like setting boundaries with each other and just trying to figure out how they work best together and kind of where they want to go moving forward. I will say at parts I gave this 4 stars, while some of the others I've been giving like 5 and 4.5, is because there were a few moments in here that were just a little bit too cheesy for me, where I was like, come on, Cole McCade, you're better than this. You don't have to rely on these, why are some people so evil? What can we do to stop these evil people? Like, I'm sure that cops have these thoughts all the time, but I just feel like we're a little far in the series for our characters to be having these conversations. So those kind of honestly made me roll my eyes a little bit. So I took some points off for that. But otherwise, I really enjoyed the continuation of their relationship in the story. This one didn't really touch on the overarching plot that has been happening throughout the series, so I did miss that as well a little bit, but I am eager to go ahead and continue the series, and I always love to spend time with Sanjay and Malcolm, so 4 stars. Up next, we have another KU book, and that is To Catch a Firefly by Emmy Sanders. And this was my 1 5-star of the month. I loved the story so much. I knew from like the very beginning that it was going to be a 5-star read. It just hooked me instantly. The characters instantly hooked me. In this book, we are following Ellis and Lucky. And this is set in, I want to say Nebraska, but I'm not really sure. Somewhere where they farm corn a lot. And it is a very small town. And when they are young children, Lucky moves there from Chicago and becomes Ellis's neighbor. And Lucky from the very beginning tells Ellis, we're gonna be friends, but one day I am getting the heck out of this small town. And Ellis is actually neurodivergent and has select mutism, and so the two of them become really close friends. Lucky really learns how to interpret Ellis's emotions and his short sentences, and they just become like the best of best friends. And as Lucky gets older, he starts to realize that a lot of his life revolves around Ellis, and that he can't really stand the thought of not having him in his life, even as he starts his dream job as a photographer who travels around the world and has adventure after adventure. One of his favorite parts is always calling Ellis and telling him all about it. Ellis, on the other hand, stays back in Nebraska, whether or not it's Nebraska, and becomes a corn farmer, and that is something that he really loves to do. He's happy with his quiet life. Also, his mother is diagnosed with MS, so he wants to make sure he stays close to her as her disability becomes worse and worse, and it becomes harder for her to live her day-to-day life as she once did. Ellis, I would say, is like demisexual as well, and he a bit later starts to realize that he feels for Lucky in a way that he has never felt for anyone else, and that he doesn't think he can feel for someone else. But at the same time, he realizes that Lucky is a very free spirit, and he does not want to keep him trapped here in this small town, and so he kind of just lets Lucky go and just accepts that they will only ever be friends. I wouldn't say that there is too much that happens in this book. There is a few exciting moments because they live in Tornado Alley of sorts. At the very least, there's a lot of tornadoes that come through there. So there was a very intense tornado scene that happened. So there is some excitement in the book, but mostly I would say it is definitely a character-driven story. It is very much about two boys who just have created this incredible bond between each other that they just don't want to let go of. It's about finding balance and being in a relationship with someone who kind of wants different things from you. Ellis wants to stay in this small town, and Lucky starts to realize that he's okay with staying in this small town as long as he can occasionally escape it through his job as well. So don't think that Lucky's out here giving up on his dreams. Ellis would never allow him to do that. Just the two of them figuring out what works for them and not really listening to what other people have to say, both because Lucky is gay, which is something a small town isn't always the biggest fan of, and because of Ellis being neurodivergent, he experienced some bullying based off of that. But Ellis is such a strong, kind man. He is the kind of person who doesn't say a lot, but I feel like he just really emotes his emotions really well. He's really just content with life. And there's something about just being with a character who doesn't have the glitzy, glamoury life a lot of people dream of having, and just being so satisfied with it that just makes you feel so good. I absolutely loved Ellis as a character. This is probably one of my favorite books of the year so far, that is for sure. And Lucky was just such a free spirit. He was so kind, he was so understanding, he was so patient, and the two of them was just chef's kiss. It was utter perfection. I loved every moment of it, and I definitely think you guys should consider checking it out. All right, guys, moving on to the final book. I went ahead and finished my bind up of the Inheritance trilogy by reading the novella The Awakened Kingdom here at the back. Now, there's technically one more novella that I need to read before I finish this series in its entirety, but I can finally move this chunky boy from my TBR cart or my unread shelf over to my read shelf, which will be really nice. Also, I never need to pick this up again because it's so heavy, unless of course I want to reread this, which I feel like I probably will sometime because I really enjoyed this series, and I ended up giving the novella 4 stars. This novella takes place after the events of this series. We are following a new godling. It has been a while since a new godling has been created, but the 3 main gods of the story decided that this was what the universe needed, and this godling kind of feels like they are here to replace another godling that had died during this series, but they don't know how to be that godling. And the other gods say, hey, you don't have to be like them, just be yourself and figure out your purpose. And this godling decides that going to the mortal realm is the best way to do that, but they are very young and don't really know how to interact with mortals, and that is very dangerous for a stumbling godling to be around such breakable beings. And so they end up interacting with some other characters that are supposed to help new godlings who come to the mortal realm learn how to interact with mortals. And they also meet a mortal that they are very interested in, because this mortal is trying to bring about change to their society that oppresses a specific group. So I thought that this was a really interesting story. I'm not a huge novella person, so it's not surprising that I only gave it 4 stars, that I just wanted a little bit more out of the story, but that's just how I am when it comes to novellas. But I did think that what was present in the story was really well done. I don't really want to say any more than I already have, but I do think that it was a really interesting topic that kind of flipped a issue that we are very familiar with on its head, and kind of looked at it from what would have happened if this group became the oppressor instead of the oppressed. So I thought that was really interesting to read about, and I always really enjoy N.K. Jemisin's characters. I think she does a really great job of writing mortals and gods, and I really like reading from the point of view of her godlings and gods, and just kind of seeing how they think about what mortals do. And I also really enjoyed how this story ended. I think it did a really good job of kind of taking the next step that the universe wants to take after what happened in the 3rd book. So it was a very natural progression from the rest of the series. So really glad that I finished this bind up. Really excited to check out the final novella and continue my N.K. Jemisin journey, because I absolutely love her. All right, guys, so those are all the books that I have read here in the second half of June. I would definitely say that To Catch a Firefly was my favorite book, and then I have to think a little bit. I guess technically the first couple volumes of Tokyo Ghoul were my least favorite of the month. I was just left a little bit underwhelmed, but we will hope for the best for the rest of the series. As always, I would love to know what your favorite and least favorite book of the month were, and as always, thank you so much for supporting my channel by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!